Hello, everyone, and welcome to this service representation and prototyping module. I'm Peter, and I had hoped very much for us to be able to host this workshop one with physical presence at the AAU Copenhagen campus this year. But unfortunately, the entire COVID situation decided otherwise again this year. So this year, the workshop will be held as an online event. But don't worry, we will manage. We did last spring and the students produced really great results, and I'm really sure that you will be able to do so too. I'll be hosting the workshop here from the confines of my own home office, and you will work together in your groups from home too. We will organize the workshop so you will use your Microsoft Teams group rooms. You will use your semester groups to collaborate throughout this workshop. And this will be a combination of you watching some video lectures made by me, and we will have some live Q&A sessions each day throughout the week where we will discuss different techniques. We will discuss questions about your design process, and then you will do group collaborations in your semester rooms throughout the day where you will produce different video and animation-based prototypes with the framework of design fiction, speculative design fictions that we will speak about in the coming video lectures here. Throughout all the days, I will be present to supervise and ask and answer questions, give you feedback within your different teams' rooms. The only thing you need to do, of course, then, is to invite me into them or tag me or call me on Teams. I think we'll discuss that also here in the afternoon here on the first day. But that will be the basic format. And without further ado, I think we will jump straight into the first sort of video lecture with the slides are on your Moodle page. So find the slides, watch this video, and we will talk at the first live Q&A later on today. Yeah, so thank you, past Pete, and let's dive into this first really short introduction for this entire module. Some of it we have covered actually on your introduction day of the semester, where we talked about some sort of the overarching frames of this entire module. But we will repeat some of it here and dive more into sort of the detailed plans of how we will conduct this week here of the first workshop, which will have a clear emphasis on the sketching parts, the temporal sketching parts of the module. And as I said before, it will be a completely virtual event this year. And hopefully we will manage. And last year we actually had a blast collaborating virtually. So hopefully we will have that again this year. Now, a little bit about myself. Many of us haven't met before. I'm Peter, and I am associate professor here at the Aalborg department at the mothership in northern Jutland. But before doing that, I have a background with a master's in interaction design from Aalborg University. Then I spent some years at various different design firms and IT companies. I was part of a few startups, some that I started myself, others where I joined sort of on a consulting basis, mostly regarding design strategy and actually sort of the digitalization and the service journeys of these different companies. Then I did a PhD at Aalborg University, specifically minded at how we actually visualize and represent very early design ideas. And that is also now my research interest as a professor at the university. I do research into visualizations within the human-computer interaction and service design field. And this would usually be the point where I would ask out in the audience, where do you come from? Because I do know that the service systems design masters here attract people from many different master's educations. Some of you might come from the humanities, some might come from an engineering background, some might come from sort of a combination of technology, media technology or something like that. Others might come from profession, bachelors of different kinds, and others come maybe from the social sciences. I often see this as a really, really big advantage, and I always look forward to this workshop because it is sort of this way of seeing how all of these interdisciplinary aspects play together in an aspect of how do we actually represent services in an engaging way. And that is sort of the framing of this entire course. It is all about representing aspects of a service design. And as the study regulations state, it is also about gaining advanced knowledge of how to represent what we call the non-functional aspects of services, such as time sequences. What happens at different touch points, and how do we represent it in a way that we can both gain feedback from others, but also so we can learn something for ourselves about these sort of more minute details of the interactions and experiences that happen within a service concept. And throughout the course, we will be using different narrative, visual, and very multimodal methods to communicate these things. And in the second part of the course, where you will be joined by XDesign, the external design consultancy, we will also work with how to actually use rapid prototyping techniques from the industry to then sort of represent very specific details of touch points we identify in the more broader spectrum here. So of course you have your study regulations. I hope you have all studied it really, really hard. It's really a pretty standard study regulation, but of course this is the basis of what you will be evaluated upon when it comes to your exams. But as you see, it is a knowledge level that is on different qualities and perceptions when we represent and experience service designs. It is about knowledge about different techniques, among them video editing, among them video sketching, but also among them different ways of embedding technology and representing how you would embed technology in your different concepts. And in the skill set, that is basically just in the applied way. You will see there is something about converting human input into data output. I know the people from XDesign will dive more into how do they actually do that in practice, so it won't be that you are expected to sit and program a lot. It is more actually to think about how data can be used at different touch points in the service journey. But here for the first part of the workshop, the course, the workshop will focus a lot on the different aspects of using video, using the different modalities to represent users and their involvement, and how to actually engage people in discussions about services. So it will be to represent these experience-related aspects in services on a synthesis level. Hopefully that will become much more evident and clear when you watch the video lectures throughout this course, how you can do that. And that's basically the sort of our agenda for this week. That is the service representation part. It is basically where we will look at different very narrative-driven methods. We will specifically dive into video and animation as sort of what I call temporal design materials where we can actually manipulate and work with the very timely and very details of all the stuff that you just cannot represent statically in service design. And that's also why the output of this workshop will be what we call temporal sketches or temporal prototypes. That is representations of a service where you actually represent the time aspect. What happens, which interactions, which touch points, which social sort of interactions will happen throughout the service journeys. And hopefully the stuff that you do in this part of the workshop will be able to be used as a foundation for the second part with XDesign. But also, we hope that you can do as the previous years has done, to actually also integrate this in your semester project. The thing that we're going to do is that we're going to use your semester projects, your cases from this semester, as the cases for the workshop. So even though you might not have concepts yet, you might not have a clear idea of where you're going with your semester projects, then this workshop can hopefully also kickstart at least some of the ideation. In a completely non-committal way, you might discard all of the ideas and sketches and concepts from this workshop, but then at least they are out there. They are out there to be criticized and then actually to be discarded. But with a little luck, you might also end up using some of these concepts for your later design process in your projects. Now in week 17 and 18, X will take over, and then it will be less about representation and more about actual prototyping. Sorry for the typo there. So that will be about specific techniques used in the design consultancy realm. It will be about actually taking a look into some of their cases from the industry and sort of deconstructing how your different methods, both from previous courses and which have been introduced here in part 1, and the ones they introduce in part 2, how they can actually come to fruition and to be used to collect and activate the learning process of iteratively working with services in this representation and prototyping domain. So that is basically our 2 workshops, the foundation of what we're going to do here in the next couple of weeks. Bit intensive in this week. It will be some long days. I know some of you might have study jobs or stuff like that. Hopefully we can work around that. And with X, it will be an engagement like 2 to 3 times a week in the 2 weeks that they are engaged with you. So let's get one of the often asked questions, if I don't cover it early on, the question about the exam. There is, of course, an exam in this module, and the exam is a written exam. It is based on that you create a series of temporal sketches, what we call video sketches, as output of this first workshop. Usually it is approximately between 3 to 6 different sketches throughout this week. And then in the second workshop, you will create at least minimum 1 service prototype concept of, for example, a specific touch point in the service journey. Then you will use a template. I've put it on Moodle already. This template will basically be used to create what we sort of would frame as a short paper. So we actually imagine, what if you had to go out to a service design conference and present your design project for your peers? So you will write a 5 to 10 pages long short paper where you come up with analytical reflections on both the process and the end products from the 2 workshops combined. And as far as I know right now, as far as Luca has informed me at least, the deadline for handing in this exam paper is the 4th of June. Now, of course, you can hand it in earlier on if you want, and the exam format is pass-fail, so it won't be graded. But it is, of course, really important that you hand it in, because you can fail it, of course, and you can also, of course, also fail it if you don't complete sort of the minimum requirements. But to this day, I have never seen anyone fail because they had not managed to create any outputs. It had only been because they actually had failed in the analytical reflections or had in other ways not followed the task. But don't fear that you won't be able to create the practical outputs of the 2 workshops. We have never seen that, and we will support you as good as we can. Now, with the exam out of the way, let's talk a bit about the sort of the specifics of this week. The couple of video lectures that you will be watching for the first day, for Monday, is where we sort of will dive into viewing design as an explorative genre. I know you have already actually had some perspective from Luca about speculative design, so that's really good. We will sort of jump on that foundation and talk more about how can we actually understand design from this explorative point of view. And specifically today, you will dive into actually exploring this concept of design fiction, a very specific subgenre of speculative design, where we use narratives, where we use what we call diegetic, that is sort of storytelling prototypes, to actually explore very complex design ideas much, much, much earlier than we could have done through traditional prototypes, especially service prototypes, where we have to put a lot of things into gears in a lot of different contexts and touch points. That will also be the basis of Monday afternoon, where you will be given a tool in which you will try to actually work in practice with trying to frame some different scenarios. You will basically use this tool to create sort of what-if questions for these design fiction scenarios that we, in the following days, from Tuesday and onwards, will use video and animation as tools to represent in the most engaging way. And you will find online I've made some how-to videos for using Adobe Premiere. You can download a 14-day trial version of that software. But of course, you can also use other pieces of software, DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut Pro or whatever fits the bill. But the only thing that we will sort of give you guidance for is Adobe Premiere, and you can get a trial version of that. And there's a lot of guidance materials that I've put up on the Moodle page. And there are some video lectures that you will be able to see where I go through the techniques of using that software to create video and animation to create design fictions. So that's basically sort of the detailed plan here of our first workshop. Monday will be in the sort of mode of introducing design fiction, and also there will be sort of a quick start for those of you who have never edited a video before, so to get all up to speed with Adobe Premiere. Then Tuesday we will dive more into video sketching, so how do we use video software to actually sketch from a design perspective, and how do we use it to also explore design fictions. Wednesday we will primarily introduce shorter, more sort of brief introductions to new and more advanced techniques as the sort of need comes up from your groups. And Thursday, and I can see I wrote Thursday 2 times, good for me, we will do sort of the same thing. We might not introduce anything if the need doesn't arise, so you will maybe just have the entire day to work on your sketches. We will take that a bit agile and see how much you manage to do on Wednesday. And Friday before lunch, we will finalize and we will output the sketching materials that you had created throughout the week. And then we will host a critique session where we, in our entire semester group here, will watch all of our productions together and give some feedback. Maybe come with some reflections that could be beneficial to put into the exam paper about sort of the analytical process and output of the sketches that you've made. So as you can see, it's a pretty intense week. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, but if the previous years has been any guidance, then you will manage fine. And I'm always happy to see how creative an output that comes from a class like yours. Now, I've put up here a sort of a more detailed day-to-day plan. We will be hosting this virtually via Microsoft Teams. And I have created a Teams room for service representation and prototyping. And I have tried to invite you with your names into this room. So hopefully it sort of pops up in your semester room too. And then you will use your own group rooms. Luca and Amalia told me that you already have individual Teams group rooms. Now I can't see them, so if you want to invite me in to get some feedback from me, you have to add me as a member of your Teams group, or maybe call me or tag me within our service representation room. Reach out, because from 8:30 to around 4 o'clock, Monday till Friday, I will be online on Microsoft Teams, and be ready to get some supervision, feedback, and especially technical assistance if the need arises for when you dive into the specific software at Adobe Premiere and the other animation software that we will use. But besides that, the week will be divided in between you doing virtual group work, that is sort of the green boxes, and you watching some video lectures that I have made available online, that is the blue ones. They are asynchronous, and I know that some people have moved into actually doing live lectures. I think our face-to-face time is a bit better used to actually do some Q&As, some more intense Q&As where you have watched lectures by me at your own pace. Maybe some of you want to watch it at the evening, some in the early morning, some after. Who knows? Let me know if this format is not working for you. Last year they preferred this kind of way. where we then instead do the first day a half an hour to meet and greet and sort of ask and answer some questions about what to do from 2:30 on Monday, where you will sort of begin your group work. And in the next days, it will be more like sort of Q&As. We can stretch it longer than 1 o'clock all the days. But it will basically be, is there any questions? Is there anything we should take in sort of common ground with all the groups gathered? And then we will quickly send you out into your groups again and work on your specific cases and with your specific techniques. Last year, this worked rather well. It became sort of our common gathering ground, and it enabled us to actually, I think, answer more questions to the lectures than would have been possible if you had to raise your hand throughout a live Teams lecture with me. So hopefully you are on board on this sort of framework for it. It will be, as you can see, some rather intense, rather long days. But then again, I am quite confident that you can time manage in your groups so you can jump in and out when it makes sense for you throughout the week. So now to sum up basically the idea, why do we say service representation and then default jump right into saying, okay, video and animation, that is our language for this module and this course. And that's basically because we have an hypothesis here that is rooted within your domain of study. To say that the service system level, up there where we talk about blueprints and touchpoint matrices and actor maps and stuff like that, we see that sort of as the macro level of design. That is where multiple things come together. It's sort of the symphony of a lot of design. Whereas sometimes when we just talk about service design, we are at this meso level. We know that there are touch points, but they are more constrained to something where we can talk about customer journeys. We can maybe talk about also experience prototypes. How is the transition from one touch point to another? And then at the micro level, service designers often also consider stuff like the user experience design. How will the interaction be? How will the aesthetic of the interface? Will there be usability issues? How will the branding work? How will we marketing it? So much more in the sort of finer grained detail of what is really, really close to the user at a given point. And our hypothesis is basically that video and animation are applicable to represent both the macro, the meso, and the micro level of a service design journey. At multiple different graphical fidelities, as we will see later on. But that is really the sort of the basic hypothesis here, that if we learn to use this language, we can actually later on represent whatever might be important for us to represent at a given moment. And combined with the prototyping techniques that you'll get from XDesign in the workshop 2, you should be able to cover this broad spectrum here of service design contexts. Throughout the first workshop here, we will have sort of 2 primary resources as the sort of reading materials. I haven't specified specific chapters, but I will specify specific aspects of the books when we cover it in the lectures. We have a book that I've written myself, an entire book about sketching with animation. So a bit pineapple in own juice, as they say. The book is really available through Aalborg University library. I've put a link on Moodle for it. So there you have 180 pages of theory, cases, examples, techniques for this specific sort of thing that we will work with in this workshop. And then a lot of the backbone of why sketching is important in design, how it can be considered to be more than just pen and paper sketching, as for an example, video sketching. We will reference a lot to Bill Buxton, who wrote this principle, one of the most cited books about design sketching out there, called Sketching User Experiences. It is available through Aalborg University library. You can actually access it online if you log in with through AUB. It's a wonderful book, a book every design student should read at some point. It's really, really great, even though that it is 15 years old soon. Then I will reference throughout the different courses, I will reference a lot of auxiliary literature. There is a page on Moodle where you can see links to some of this stuff. You can find it on different databases, including AOB. And fear not, it's not that you in your exam papers have to reference all of this, but this is for the specific deep dives. This is for if you actually need to argue or write some reflections about some very specific things. Then you can go to the sort of auxiliary sources that I quote myself in, for example, my book, and that Bill Buxton also references in his book. So that's sort of to see this. This is sort of the foundation that these books are built on, and we will reference these foundations too throughout the workshop. And as we've already said, the corona pandemic didn't loosen its grip on us, unfortunately. So even though that I would have loved to be able to host a workshop like this in physical presence at Aalborg University campus, we will once again have to rely on our digital platforms. So that means Moodle for all the official messages, change of plans, slide uploads, stuff like that. Microsoft Teams for voice and video chat, our virtual group rooms. It can actually be an awesome experience. I hope some of you have actually experienced that it can work quite well. And of course our Q&As daily, where we will log in, all be present in a meeting that I create and take sort of a Q&A and discussion about the status of your individual progresses. And then I have uploaded all of the video lectures to YouTube. I've posted links on Moodle, but you can find actually also an entire playlist of these things on on YouTube. And YouTube will also be the preferred platform for you to upload your own productions, your video sketches throughout the workshop. It is up to you if you want to hide them so that only persons with the link can see them, or if you want to make them publicly available. You can also use Vimeo, but we would prefer that you used YouTube so we sort of have a common ground, and that's something to do with also how we do the critique session on Friday. And Teams has sometimes failed us. The server has broken down in the middle of us having to do some presentations in the spring last year. So we will have Zoom as our backup channel. So please make sure to have installed Zoom. I wrote here that Discord can host up to 50 users. We actually also had last year we had Discord as sort of our backup too. But this year we have chosen that it should be Zoom. Make sure to have installed Zoom. Make sure to have it set up. So if we suddenly, with a few minutes warning, need to host our live Q&A on Zoom, that we can quickly adjust after the plan for that. And now, of course, the workshop usually looks a lot like this, especially workshop 1. We explore different materials and how they can be used to really quickly sketch and represent some of these service journeys at the macro, meso, and micro level. And you can see it's a very tangible workshop. And that, of course, also often include that you actually end up representing things by yourself. We usually have a lot of fun exploring green screen techniques for representing contexts that have not been designed yet. And this usually actually drives for a lot of the fun, that we explore the concepts with both our materials and ourselves. And of course, this year it will, like last year, be a wee bit different. You will be a one-man wolf pack in your individual home offices, in your groups, of course. But I really do trust, based on the experience of last year, that it's going to be all right. You're probably already quite experienced in doing virtual group work by now. And so I'm quite confident that you'll be able to keep the energy and actually to have a nice collaboration across your different virtual group spaces throughout this workshop. Fingers crossed, at least. So most of the tools that will be taught, most of the tools that I'll introduce, can be taught and used completely remotely. And I have worked out and uploaded most of the introduction videos by now. I will upload a few more in the coming days. And we have saw last year that you could actually rather quickly adjust to co-produce different videos in the group. So maybe you actually work on different aspects of the video sketches and then edit them together in the end. And an important thing that I'm going to repeat a lot is that this is not a workshop which is about high fidelity, beautiful visuals. It is about creating good design representation. And good design representation is all about the ideation. Can you actually represent ideas? Can you represent ideas in a way so people can understand them, but also criticize them, communicate with you about them? That's what it's all about. We can spend hour upon hour fine-tuning the visuals later on if we want. But this is sketching mode. This is ideation through video and animation. And now I can see I wrote Discord once again. I'm sorry. I, of course, mean Teams here. That we will do the online supervision and feedback through Microsoft Teams, not Discord. Even though I love Discord. I think it will work fine. There is this caveat of me having access to your group rooms. I hope we find a nice way of you to call me up whenever you need some feedback from me. Let's see if we won't. We will probably figure that out in the first day or so. And the exams, there's always a question about, are you at a disadvantage because of this virtual? I really don't think so. I think we will accept that the new name of the game is that things has been done remotely, collaboration has been done remotely, and that you won't have had access to, for example, to a full green screen as we would normally have. I will introduce you in some of the next videos to some techniques to sort of do most of this at home, but we know that this is the name of the game, and the exams sort of expectancy to which tools you will apply are adjusted accordingly. So don't panic. I think that is sort of the gist of it. And if everything else fails and something you don't want to write in a group room on Teams, then you can always write me an email. It's stated right here. If there are any questions, both to the format of the workshop, the exam, the expectations, the tools, etc. But you can also just write to me on Teams. And apparently I chose that had to go down in flames. Okay, so the previous years, these types of animation-based video sketches have varied a lot in fidelity and purpose. We're going to talk more about that later on. But I also think I actually showed you some of these examples at our semester introduction day, just to sort of set the expectancy, what have people produced the years before? And that is everything from really rough stop motion to people filming live film and edited it like a short film, to creating some green screened effects where they've placed themselves inside of a virtual context, or putting animated overlays on top of either still images or, at this case, GoPro footage, for example. So it's hard. It's kind of hard, we know, to escape these biases that will often come, and in only the sort of 10 consecutive days, if you take from workshop 1 and workshop 2, you actually only have 10 days in total for this entire course module. So one of the lessons that I will give you already now is make sure to save as much as you can. These diegetic prototypes, that is the video prototypes that you make, they have to be very agnostic. So we have to basically be able to see how have your ideas evolved from not just what you think is a good idea, but what you already can sort of prove or qualify from your knowledge about users or your state-of-the-art research, your desk research and stuff like that. And the exam is basically just all about you being as transparent as possible about the process, the intent that goes into whatever output you end up sort of submitting for us. That is sort of the evaluation criteria. So it's just to say that when you see something like this, here where we have a rather high fidelity sketch, that it is not to say that you will be evaluated whether this was of great quality. Is it a good idea? We won't sort of pick and choose if it's a good idea. But it's about, have you made it transparent in your exam paper why a service journey should be represented in this way? Why did you choose this technique? How did it support actually representing, as here, this is wayfinding in the healthcare system that a group worked with? That is sort of the thing that we are looking for. That is the thing that you should qualify yourself in. That is the things that you should collaborate with your groups on. Actually, okay, do we have enough notes? Do we have enough reflections on this to actually later on write our own individual papers based on the collaboratively made video sketches here? But you shouldn't fear if the sketches that you end up making in this week looks more like something like this, much more rough. This is from a museum, a service journey some students worked with, where you can see it's just cut out animations. Really, really simple, but it represented the service fine. And they reflected on how much they actually had managed to make based on the lower visual fidelity here. So that worked just as well. And actually some of the best sketches I've ever seen, some of the most communicative, some of the most engaging, and actually representing most critical aspects of a service journey, has sometimes been so simple as what we call animatics. Still images captured with some voiceover.
Ali opens the Refuge Journey app and gets an overview of both the long and short-term milestones. The app is
really not that high audio quality, not a high visual quality, but a high conceptual quality. And we will see examples in the coming video lectures here on both the sort of high quality visuals and the lower quality visuals. And we will discuss how all of these different aspects can actually work in the end. Because I actually think that is one of the most important things that I can say here in the end. That throughout this workshop, you should not be intimidated by graphical fidelity. You should not be intimidated by aesthetic, because we will probably again this year see a scope from the very simple to the very advanced in terms of that. But year after year, we see that it is really about the conceptual quality and the reflections on how this actually represents a valuable aspect of the service design. That is sort of the critical learning objective and what you should aim for, sort of sharpening and honoring your skills for in this coming week. Because it is still just about classic design thinking. It is still about asking these famous what-if questions, just with new representation techniques, or at least representation techniques that might be used in a new way throughout both this Workshop 1 and Workshop 2. And that actually concludes here my sort of introduction for, or I forgot that to mention that the difference here is, of course, that in the first week, we will do it through storytelling techniques. And then that concludes sort of our initial introduction here to the coming week. And the next video lecture that you will be watching will introduce design fiction, sort of the main storytelling framework that we're going to work with throughout this week as a service representation sort of framework. When you've seen the design fiction lecture, the parts of that, there is a shorter lecture where I introduce the tool called the Design Fiction Matrix. That tool will be the one that you are expected to work with in the afternoon Monday to begin to form sort of the scenarios that we will sketch in video and animation from Tuesday on. So in the first Q&A session Monday at 12:30, we will be discussing this matrix and how you in the groups can begin to use it. But for now, watch the introduction to design fiction as a method, and then I'm looking very much forward to meet you all and talk to you in the first live Q&A session later on. So happy design fiction watching.